stop taking advice and start making mistakes? All right, let's face it. We live in a world drowning in advice. Everywhere you look, there's someone telling you what to do, how to live better, how to succeed, how to be happy. We scroll through endless videos, podcasts, books, each one offering the solution to your problems. But at some point, you've got to wonder, is all this advice even helping? Or is it holding you back from something far more important? That's what we're diving into today. Stop taking advice and start making mistakes. It might sound reckless, but stick with me here because this is about to get deep. Let's start with the obvious. Advice is comforting. When someone gives you a clear path, whether it's a mentor, a friend, or some self-help guru, it feels like they're giving you a shortcut. They've already walked the path, so why wouldn't you follow it? But here's the problem: their path is not your path. Think about it. Every piece of advice is filtered through someone else's experiences, their fears, their aspirations. It's shaped by their specific circumstances, their biology, their environment. Sure, it might have worked for them, but the world they lived in when they made those choices is not the world you live in now. Even worse, by constantly following advice, you're robbing yourself of the freedom to fail, to learn, and to grow. Here's the truth: you can't skip the hard parts. Advice tries to make life easier, but life isn't about avoiding pain or mistakes, it's about embracing them. Every mistake you make is an opportunity to learn something unique, something that no piece of advice could ever give you. When you make a mistake, you're forced to confront a new reality, one that's entirely your own. You have to adapt, adjust, and think critically. That's where real growth happens. Let me ask you a deep question. When was the last time you let yourself make a mistake without trying to fix it immediately? We're trained to avoid mistakes. But what if the mistake is the lesson? What if failure is exactly what you need to push yourself to the next level, to become the person you're meant to be?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Think about how children learn. They don't read manuals on how to walk. They don't watch 1,000 videos on how to ride a bike. They just do it. They fall, they get back up, they fall again, and eventually they figure it out. That's how we're wired to learn. But somewhere along the way, we've convinced ourselves that failure is something to be avoided at all costs. We've become obsessed with perfection, with getting it right the first time, and that's killing our ability to grow. Now, don't get me wrong, advice isn't inherently bad. There's value in learning from others, but when advice becomes a crutch, when it becomes the thing that keeps you from taking risks, from making decisions for yourself, that's when it becomes dangerous. Because here's the thing: no one can live your life for you. No one can make your mistakes for you. And if you're always following someone else's blueprint, you'll never discover your own potential. Let's get philosophical for a second. Think about the great thinkers throughout history: Socrates, Nietzsche, Kierkegaard. None of these people followed the beaten path. In fact, their entire contribution to human thought came from pushing against the norms, from making mistakes, from questioning everything. Socrates was condemned to death for challenging the status quo. But his willingness to question, to embrace uncertainty, is what made him one of the most influential philosophers of all time. So, here's another deep question for you. What would your life look like if you stopped trying to get it right and just allowed yourself to get it wrong? What if, instead of trying to follow the perfect career path, the perfect relationship advice, or the perfect self-improvement plan, you just let yourself stumble through it? What if stumbling is the whole point? There's this idea in philosophy called anti-fragility, the concept that some things actually get stronger when they're exposed to stress, chaos, and failure. Think about it, when you lift weights, you're literally tearing your muscles apart. But then they rebuild themselves stronger than before. The same is true for your mind, your emotions, your entire being. You need stress, you need mistakes, you need mistakes, you need failure to grow. But in today's world, we avoid all of that. We avoid discomfort at all costs. We want quick fixes and easy solutions. But life doesn't work that way. The most important lessons you'll ever learn won't come from a book or a video, they'll come from your own experiences, from falling down and getting back up. So, here's what I'm challenging you to do: start making mistakes. Stop waiting for the perfect advice, the perfect plan, the perfect moment, and just dive in. Whatever it is you're afraid of failing at, whether it's starting a business, pursuing a passion, or even just having a difficult conversation, stop overthinking it and just do it. You're going to mess up. You're going to have regrets. But guess what? That's exactly what's supposed to happen. Those mistakes will teach you more than any advice ever could. Success without struggle is hollow. The power of owning your mistakes. Let's pick up from where we left off. So, you're probably thinking, but why should I make mistakes when I can avoid them by learning from others? That's a fair question. And yes, sometimes learning from others can save you a lot of time and pain. But here's the thing: learning from others doesn't replace the value of learning from yourself. Think about it this way. Advice is like a map, but maps can only show you a predetermined path. They don't account for detours, new roads, or unexpected obstacles. When you rely too much on a map, you miss out on discovering your own route, your own unique way of navigating life. You become a passive traveler instead of an active explorer. And life isn't meant to be traveled passively. Let me ask you this: have you ever followed someone's advice perfectly and still felt unfulfilled? Maybe you did everything right, you followed the steps, avoided the pitfalls, and succeeded by external standards. But something still felt off. Why is that? It's because success without struggle is hollow. When you don't encounter your own challenges and make your own mistakes, you miss out on the deeper understanding that comes from grappling with life's complexities firsthand. Mistakes give you something that advice never can: ownership. When you make a mistake, it's yours. You own it. You learn from it in a way that's deeply personal. It's no longer just theoretical knowledge, it's something you've lived. And that lived experience is invaluable. It becomes part of your story, part of who you are. There's an old saying, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. It's a paradox, but it's true. You can't develop good judgment without first making a lot of bad decisions. You need to experience failure, frustration, and even embarrassment to sharpen your instincts. That's how you build resilience, wisdom, and ultimately, confidence. Here's another deep question for you: what's the worst that could happen if you made a mistake? Seriously, think about it. Most of the time, the consequences we fear are far less catastrophic than we imagine. We build them up in our minds, but in reality, mistakes are rarely life-ending. They're life-shaping. They redirect us, guide us, and force us to confront parts of ourselves we wouldn't otherwise see. Now, let me be clear, I'm not saying you should go out and deliberately sabotage your life. I'm saying you should stop being so afraid of failure that you paralyze yourself into inaction. Stop overanalyzing every decision, waiting for the perfect moment, or trying to follow some foolproof plan. There is no foolproof plan. Life is messy, unpredictable, and full of surprises. And that's a good thing. By embracing mistakes, you open yourself up to possibilities you never would have considered otherwise. You stop seeing failure as the end and start seeing it as the beginning of something new. Every mistake is just a step on the path to something greater. The fear of failure is worse than failure itself. Let's dive even deeper into one of the most paralyzing forces in our lives: fear of failure. It's this fear that keeps us from taking risks, from trying new things, and from stepping outside our comfort zones. But here's the truth: the fear of failure is often worse than the failure itself. We build it up in our minds, making it this huge, terrifying monster that we must avoid at all costs. But when we actually face failure, it's rarely as catastrophic as we imagined. Why is that? Why do we let fear control us so much? It's because we've been conditioned to believe that failure defines us, that if we mess up, it somehow reflects our worth, our intelligence, or our capabilities. But here's the reality: failure is simply feedback. It's the world's way of telling you that something didn't work, not that you didn't work. There's a huge difference. Let me ask you a deep question: what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Think about that for a moment. If failure wasn't an option, if you knew you would succeed no matter what risks would you take? What dreams would you pursue? Now, flip that question around. What if failure is the very thing you need to succeed? You see, we've got it all wrong. We treat failure as the opposite of success, but in reality, failure is a part of success. You can't have one without the other. Every great inventor, artist, entrepreneur, or thinker has failed countless times before they achieved success. Thomas Edison famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That's the mindset we need to adopt. Failure isn't the end of the road, it's a necessary stop along the way. But society doesn't teach us to embrace failure. From a young age, we're trained to avoid mistakes. In school, we're punished for wrong answers. In the workplace, we're judged for errors. In relationships, we're criticized for missteps. This constant pressure to be perfect creates a fear-based mentality where mistakes feel like personal flaws rather than opportunities for growth. Here's another deep question: how much of your fear of failure comes from worrying about what others will think? To be honest, we don't just fear the consequences of failure, we fear the judgment that comes with it. We fear being seen as incompetent, as a loser, as someone who couldn't cut it. But here's the thing: other people's opinions don't define you. They don't live your life. They don't walk your path, and they don't experience your challenges. Why should their judgment hold so much power over you? The truth is, the most successful people in the world are the ones who stopped caring about what others think. They embraced failure because they understood that the only way to avoid failure is to live so cautiously that you never do anything at all. And that's not living. That's existing. Now, let's talk about another crucial aspect of failure: resilience. When you fail and get back up, you're building something far more valuable than success. You're building resilience. Resilience is the ability to keep going when things get tough, to push through setbacks, and to learn from adversity. It's what separates those who give up at the first sign of trouble from those who go on to achieve greatness. But here's the kicker: you can't develop resilience if you never fail. If you always play it safe, if you always follow the advice of others and avoid risks, you'll never have the opportunity to test your limits. You'll never know what you're truly capable of because you've never pushed yourself to the edge. Failure is what forces you to grow, to adapt, and to become stronger. Let me ask you another deep question: when was the last time you failed at something and allowed yourself to truly feel the failure? Not brush it off, not make excuses, but really sit with it, reflect on it, and understand what went wrong. Most of us try to move past failure as quickly as possible, but that's a mistake. Failure is a mirror. It shows us where we need to improve, where we need to grow, and where we need to change. But if we don't take the time to look into that mirror, we miss the lesson. So, instead of fearing failure, what if you embraced it? What if, the next time you failed, you celebrated it as a sign that you're pushing yourself, that you're trying something new, that you're stepping into the unknown? What if you saw failure not as a setback but as a step forward? Here's one final thought for this part: the only true failure is the failure to try. Every time you avoid taking a risk because you're afraid of failing, you're failing in a much deeper way. You're failing to live up to your potential. You're failing to experience the fullness of life. So stop taking advice, stop playing it safe, and start making mistakes. That's where the real magic happens. Embrace the unknown, the path to authentic growth. Now that we've explored the fear of failure and the immense value of making mistakes, let's talk about something even more fundamental: the unknown. At the heart of our fear of failure lies a deeper fear, the fear of uncertainty. We crave predictability, control, and safety. But here's the profound truth: growth doesn't happen in the known. It happens in the unknown. Look at your life right now. How many decisions are you making based on what's comfortable? How many choices are you avoiding because you don't know what's on the other side? We fill our lives with routines, habits, and systems to protect ourselves from uncertainty, but in doing so, we often close ourselves off from the very experiences that could transform us. Here's a question to really sit with: what would your life look like if you embraced uncertainty instead of avoiding it? What if, instead of fearing the unknown, you saw it as an adventure, an open door to new possibilities, new lessons, and new growth? The unknown is where life's greatest opportunities lie, but most people never get there because they're too afraid to leave the safety of the familiar. Think about this: every time you step into the unknown, you step closer to your true self. The version of yourself that hasn't yet been shaped by fear, by failure, by societal expectations. It's in the unknown that you find out what you're really made of. You learn what you're capable of, not because someone told you, but because you discovered it for yourself. And that's something no advice, no mentor, no book can ever give you. Let's go even deeper. Why do we fear the unknown? At its core, it's because we fear losing control. We fear not knowing what will happen next. But here's the paradox: you never really had control to begin with. Life is unpredictable. No matter how much advice you follow, how many plans you make, or how safe you try to play it, you can't control everything. The unexpected will happen. Mistakes will be made. Failure is inevitable. But that's not something to fear, it's something to embrace. Because once you realize that control is an illusion, you can start to let go. And when you let go, you free yourself to truly live. You stop making decisions based on fear, and you start making them based on curiosity, on passion, on what excites you. You stop looking for guarantees and start looking for experiences. Here's a final deep question. When was the last time you did something that scared you, not because you knew it would work out, but because you didn't know? If you're like most people, it's probably been a while. We're conditioned to avoid fear, to avoid discomfort, but it's in these moments of uncertainty that we find our greatest breakthroughs. Think about the most meaningful moments of your life. Were they the safe, predictable ones? Or were they the ones where you took a risk, where you stepped into the unknown, where you allowed yourself to be vulnerable, to fail, and to grow? I'm willing to bet that your most transformative experiences didn't come from taking advice, they came from taking a leap. So, as we wrap up, I want you to remember this: the unknown is not your enemy. It's your greatest teacher. It's where you'll find the lessons that no one else can give you. It's where you'll make mistakes, yes, but it's also where you'll find the wisdom that comes from those mistakes. It's where you'll discover your resilience, your strength, and your ability to adapt. Stop living your life according to someone else's script. Stop waiting for the perfect advice, the perfect moment, or the perfect plan. Start stepping into the unknown, start making mistakes, and start living a life that's truly your own. Because at the end of the day, it's not the advice you followed that will define you, it's the risks you took, the failures you embraced, and the mistakes you learned from. That's how you grow. That's how you become the person you're meant to be. So, stop taking advice and start making mistakes. The unknown is waiting for you.